Big ups to my man, Judge Timothy Dorr, bankruptcy judge handling the case for DarkSydePhil. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota, with a quick update on the DarkSydePhil ongoing bankruptcy suit. And if you like these quick videos and short updates, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click a like, share it around so people can stay up to date on cases that I'm following that they may also be following. All right, so DarkSydePhil is he's pushing through this bankruptcy at an embarrassing pace. It's almost like he's doing it on Twitch. Maybe I shouldn't do too many jokes. I don't know. Here's the deal. All right, so DarkSydePhil, as you may or may not know, has filed both filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. There are two major types of bankruptcies that a normal person would file, a person who's not a corporation. The common ones are Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, okay? Chapter 7 is a relief from unsecured debts. So any debt that's not secured by a piece of property with like a lien or something like that, or a mortgage, those debts will actually go away. And there are some strict requirements that came in the 2000s on those Chapter 7s. Before, it was much easier to get a complete relief of debt. Now they've changed it and they've tightened up the requirements, so you have to meet income requirements and things like that. Otherwise, you'll get converted to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is not a relief from the debt entirely, but it could be a reduction in payments through some negotiations that's facilitated by the bankruptcy court. So they determine how much you can pay and order you to pay that, rather than just forgiving the debt. Obviously, Chapter 7 is where you want to go because you want the debt to go away rather than have the debt still hanging over your head with just a reduced payment. So DarkSydePhil has filed for Chapter 7, and I've been through his paperwork on a live stream. You've probably seen it. There are some questions about that paperwork. He doesn't seem to adequately report his income or assets or property that he may own, personal property. So there's some real questions about that. Now, how does a bankruptcy court find out the answers to some of these questions? Well, they have something called a Rule 341 meeting. And that meeting was supposed to occur on Thursday, March 5th of 2020. But DSP didn't show up. I believe his counsel was there. And what's the result of this? Let me cut right to the chase. Will DSP be penalized for not showing up to the 341 meeting? Not really. Probably not. I mean, I suppose he could, but it's unlikely that he'll be actually punished. And the meeting has been rescheduled for March 26th. So we'll be watching for the results of that meeting to see if he shows up to that one. But at the very onset, let me just say that there is probably nothing bad that will happen to DSP for not attending this first hearing and getting a continuance. If it becomes a pattern and it looks like he's abusing the bankruptcy court's scheduling to delay or cause undue hardship on his creditors, because part of the bankruptcy proceeding is that creditors' collection attempts are all stayed. And if they are to violate those the stay on collection attempts, they can actually get in some trouble. There can be penalties and sanctions that can be awarded against them for bad faith collection efforts, and they may be in violation of the law. So there's a stay on collection. But part of the agreement of that stay is that you work to adjudicate the bankruptcy expeditiously and you comply with your hearing schedule and all of that. But life happens in court and people will get continuances. If it becomes a pattern, it becomes a problem. Until then, probably not. All right, that out of the way. Let's talk about what this Rule 341 meeting is, why it's important to the bankruptcy process, and why maybe DSP decided to skip it. Okay, so Rule 341 is called a meeting of creditors. It's where the bankruptcy the person requesting bankruptcy meets with the bankruptcy trustee. Now, the trustee is who facilitates the case, because you can't really have a bankrupt party in an adversarial judicial proceeding where the collection efforts are stayed, communicating with creditors and stuff like that. Also, the bankrupt party is, I don't know, presumed is the right word, but presumed to be not very good at managing the financial situation. So the bankruptcy trustee is appointed by the court, and they come in with the job of managing what's called the bankruptcy estate. So they figure out all of the credits, the creditors. They send letters out to everybody. They do all of the communication. Their job is to make sure something doesn't get missed by the bankruptcy party, the bankruptcy requesting party, I should say. The debtor. We'll call him the debtor. DarkSydePhil. Make sure DarkSydePhil doesn't forget to send something. It's a complicated legal process, and they want to make sure everything is done by the rules. So the trustee comes in to facilitate the case, and then they will determine the order in which the creditors will get paid out if there's anything left over in the bankruptcy estate after all of the rules are applied and all of the judgments are made. And if other stuff comes to light, the bankruptcy trustee can actually file on behalf of the estate something that the debtor may not want to file. Like if the debtor were to win a $10,000 lottery ticket or something and show up in a newspaper, bankruptcy trustee finds out about it, and the debtor didn't report it, the bankruptcy trustee can actually file that with the court and facilitate the transfer of those funds to the proper party. Stuff like that. Okay, that's kind of a weird example, but they facilitate the case. And so this Rule 341 meeting is where the debtor meets with the trustee in court and answers questions under oath from the trustee about the paperwork that they filed. Now, not just the trustee can show up. The creditors can all also show up. They can send a representative, and those creditors can get to ask questions of the debtor under oath as well. They're on the witness stand, and they have to give testimony about their documents. As you may know, there are some questions about DSP's documents. As I stated before, it kind of looks like he may not have fully represented his income and assets. He did amend his he amended his original filing and added some additional assets to it that I believe he considers exempt, but that'll be a question for the court and the trustee, and that'll be interesting. But he was going to have to answer questions under oath, and he missed the meeting. By the way, just so if you want to know how I know this, here you go. Here is the scheduling that occurred. It was due and set for the 5th of March, as you can see. It was satisfied today on the 9th of March, and it was satisfied by rescheduling it to March 26th at 10:30 a.m. So the other things that are on here, the complaint deadline, just so you're aware, that is where the deadline for creditors to file a complaint about the paperwork that DSP has filed. So if they believe that he has not represented everything correctly, if they can provide evidence of that, then they will file those complaints by May 4th. At this time, that could be continued, but for now, it's May 4th. And the final installment payment they're talking about is DSP got permission to pay for the cost of the bankruptcy suit in installment payments, and the final payment is June 1st. So that doesn't have anything to do with him paying his debt. That has everything to do with him paying for the cost of bringing the bankruptcy proceeding. So that's how that goes. This is the current schedule that's out there for DSP's bankruptcy case. So we'll be watching on 3/26 to see if anything changes. It'll actually probably take a day or two for stuff to show up. But he did not go to this meeting. It was rescheduled. Normally at a 341 meeting of creditors, for a lot of people, the creditors don't actually show up, right? For a lot of people, the paperwork's generally straightforward, and they know they haven't been paid, so the debt's a lot of times are very small for many of the creditors. Like if you have a bunch of $5,000 maxed out credit cards or something, you know, they're not going to send someone down because it's going to cost an attorney a whole bunch of money to find out that you can't pay. So they're not going to invest in it. In DSP's case, there's some different questions here, because even on the face of his paperwork, ignoring what you know about DSP, ignoring the fact that there's some suspicion that there's maybe a little bit of misrepresentation going on, certainly unintentional, in the filings. Even if you take his filings at face value, there's questions. He reports a large amount of income and then huge business expenses, but doesn't really talk about what those business expenses are and doesn't seem to have any property to show for it. So he also says that he doesn't run a sole proprietorship and doesn't list the business LLC documents or anything like that. So creditors are going to look at this and go, wait a minute, this guy's got a lot of income. Just as what he's reporting here is significant, how is he unable to pay these debts? How does he have $5,000 in business expenses? What is his business even doing? How does he have pet food but no pets listed? Stuff like that. What is going on with these documents? And that is possibly going to be the problem. This is why you actually do go ahead and file accurate documents, and you work really hard to make sure you do, because if your documents raise questions that creditors want answers to, they'll show up to this meeting and you'll be answering them under oath. And those questions are about your property, about your assets, about your income. They'll ask you questions. Where do you get your income from? Oh, you make $5,000 a month doing streaming on Twitch? Okay. How is that? How'd you calculate that $5,000 a month? Is it $5,000 every month? Do you have an agreement with Twitch? You know, tell me about how that income figure comes about. Is it ever higher than $5,000 a month? Is it ever lower than $5,000 a month? What are the last 6 months of figures? And they'll have to actually start to answer these questions. And when you look at Phil's filings, he seems to have really selected a specific period with large amounts of expenses loaded into a couple months that he could then average out. And creditors are going to really have questions about that. They're going to ask, what are these business expenses? Tell me about them. What did you spend $5,000 a month on for just streaming out of your house, for example? So you've got a PlayStation and you've got a Twitch account, like what, and a camera? Okay, are you refreshing them every month? Do you have a special PlayStation? Are you buying hundreds of games? How are you getting to these business expenses? These are the questions that Phil didn't have to answer on Thursday, but will potentially have to answer on the 26th. And is also kind of the problem with filing bankruptcy as a public person who derives income from public activity, is once he says to them, and they figure out or whatever who they have on the stand, if they want to pursue it, they can go to his Twitch channel and they can watch donations come in and they can start tallying things up and they can ask questions about how things are going. They can go back to past broadcasts. They can try and figure out if he has sponsorship deals that he hasn't listed. You know, all sorts of different things. Has he been gifted property in kind, like chairs and stuff like that? Pro gamer chairs. All these questions can come up. And the solution to them is just filing accurate paperwork from the start that doesn't raise issues, not trying to game the system. But if he didn't game the system, he might be in Chapter 13, which means his debt might not be forgiven. I don't know that he's actually gaming anything. I want to be very clear on that. But if I were a creditor, that paperwork would raise significant red flags for me, and it will probably raise red flags for the trustee as well. So this has just been an update on DSP's bankruptcy case. I want you guys to know that I am following it, and as stuff does develop in it, we will cover it on the show. And so also watch for notifications for DSP live stream. If something big in the case happens, it's bigger than just a short video, I will definitely cover it, and we can go through documents and see what's out there. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. Hope this was informative and educational. And if it was, like I said, please do all the channel stuff, liking and subscribing. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good day. Peace. Peace.